about all the movies that dropped that Omicron talked about?
Yeah.
I didn't fall asleep, but I did it intentionally. It's ironic you bring it forward because I'm actually kind of excited for the card.
Yeah, actually,
Did you watch the trailer?
I haven't though.
Oh man.
I'm not huge Star Trek fan,
I'm not, but it's what I grew up. It's I tried. I have seen every single one of them just growing up with my dad and stuff. But it's,
but yeah.
It was funny to watch the video for the movie. I was not seeing commercials were coming out on Blu-ray. I just thought it was ironic. I'm like,
Siri listens, man.
I'm like, oh, we just watched it. I'm like, no reason to buy it now. I just saw it.
I seen this one post where it's this guy's talking to his wife, and his wife's like, "Why are you whispering?" He goes, "Because I'm afraid Mark Zuckerberg's listening." He goes, "We laugh, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed," and it's like, oh, what?
Everyone knows Mark Zuckerberg.
So does that everything. What was the last thing? Oh, camping. Good tire treads. This tire treads bring movie nights. We'll get up
Finish the late thing. And we got further into it, we got the water set up. You still need to render it out?
Yes, I just didn't do like the side, put the water in.
Okay.
Oh, the trains, like when we actually have to draw it out and stuff. She didn't do that. That is so fun.
So I was like kind of looking at our schedule, and one of like the unintended side effects of switching to Arnold was like renders used to take like 40 minutes for every project.
Right.
But you know, like 10, 15 minutes to set it up and like 20 minutes to render, you know. And some people would start sooner, some people start later. But like that stuff all takes like 15 minutes tops with Arnold. And so we've been gaining time in each class.
So we're kind of ahead.
So we're like kind of ahead. So I'm thinking of like introducing an extra project or two that'll probably just be like maybe an expansion of other things I had planned or something. And maybe just having like a day where we do makeups and stuff. And then before we jump into the final. Because if I give you guys like 3 days on the final, it's too long. And people are going to want to bounce early instead of putting like a lot of time into it. So I only want to have that last week. Okay. Let's start with class tonight. It'll be a decent portion of today that you'll be just working on your own. Oh, it is, yes, sorry. Reminded me that the original Alita trailer looked a lot different.
Who told you?
In the original like release trailer, Alita looked way different.
I hate when they show things on certain trailers, and it's really like, oh, that's a cool part. I can't wait to see it in the movie. It never makes it into the movie.
Yeah.
They did that with Spider-Man.
Yeah, they did that with Ant-Man too. The second one, Ant-Man and Wasp. When he's all big, he goes, I need people. And he's like, no, I'm just kidding. But then in the movie, he's like, oh, he's all tired and stuff and sluggish. And it's like, you have to wait for the Blu-ray to cut scene.
They took all the gruesome stuff out of Spider-Man so it was gory. Which was supposed to stab herself in the eye, and it's all they took that out. It was disappointing.
Alright, so
Censorship.
I finally got around to seeing Wreck-It Ralph 2, and I pretty much hated it. But the only part I ended up liking,
Oh, Princess is cute.
the princesses were fine as bad. The thing I thought was funny was the part in the trailer where he was like playing the game and kept feeding the bunny until it exploded or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's not in the movie.
No.
And then right at the end, during credits, there's a little girl, like, it shows the little girl with her mom. And she's like, did you like the movie? She's like, yeah, but I'm mad the scenes in the trailer weren't in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then, then that scene plays out. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. Like, I feel like that movie had a lot of great people working on it that wanted it to be like the original. But then executives showed up and said, put in the eBay and put in the Facebook stuff because we think that's what people want.
Of course.
And just turn that thing into garbage. So
And what you want?
I loved that the first one stayed the hell away from all of that. I thought that was. I guess I don't know where they would have gone with that. But still,
I mean, he went to the internet. What did you expect?
I didn't want him to go to the internet though.
I wanted him to jump into another
I wanted to go to a home console or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where he would have taken it. I don't know, but.
What's this Raspberry Pi?
They moved him to another arcade.
I don't know, maybe. Okay. Let's watch Girls. I feel like watching Girls today.
Okay.
I like her. They're a weird band. They do CG videos or hybrid videos. So.
I like it.
Yeah. Let's break them.
Madam, the ship is under attack from pirates. I've been sent to escort you to the lifeboats. Madam? Oh. Oh dear.
Oh.
Oh, nice.
Well, beautiful.
And that was the answers for the final. Hope you copied all that down.
I'm so
Not
everything.
Start normally?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, just start normally, guys.
Unplug everything. That's the answer.
We can call Jeff and make sure there's nothing, make sure everything, something I need to check to make sure there's never going to go down.
Otherwise, we have a short day. Everybody gets to go home.
All right.
Get back into the heat.
Dude, it's so hot out there.
Yo, the AC in my house just went down and everything. I'm just like,
I hope that didn't mess up my truck.
Yeah. But I'm guessing we don't have one.
I bring my dog in. I bought him his own air conditioning. Personal air conditioning. His water cooler.
What kind of dog do we have?
He gets like overheated.
Have you go to get his undercoat for that?
No, if he's cut, they cut him and now he's on fur on one spot for the rest of years because they shaved him down.
Where'd you take him?
I didn't do it.
Is like everything in the room stayed up okay? Boy, I killed the air conditioner. You immediately
kids playing soccer ball, kicking the ball against the wall.
Damn kids. You damn kids.
I don't think network's back up. It's taking forever to log on.
Hey.
You would say,
I know, right?
Yeah.
Good class. Good job.
What? I took it last semester, but I'm using my sketchbook to do my,
Say, Thursday?
my final stuff.
Third on Thursday. Beautiful.
And also, yeah. I was trying to do something that we started.
It's taking a while for
I wanted to do something like using that creature, but do like a snake head and have all these different pictures go together. Like, what are you doing with that platform? So, oh, here we go.
Hey, ha, take that.
Now I'm doing something where it's a dude that's
Shit happens.
down on his knees, hunched over, just kind of know what's going on, but then behind him, like, you know,
Work your side.
big old
Don't you
fire.
like that, man?
Or you
Wall.
just look at it.
Maybe it might still be in there. Yeah, right, huh?
It's gonna be water, but I'm like, that doesn't really symbolize angels that much. Doesn't have an angel like aiming down with his arm out trying to say, you know.
Yeah.
What? Well, you can't really do the light on there. I mean, I could do it with paint it, but because it's ZBrush, you're basically doing a sculpture. So you can't really simulate the what? Yeah, I think cloud would be better. Cloud would symbolize an angel more.
okay, so there might be some temporary stuff, but if everything should come back up.
Yeah.
Can any of you guys get out to the internet?
Yeah, it took a while, but I finally logged in.
Okay, cool.
So what's a problem?
Where it's just a temporary drop in.
A blackout where it's out for a couple minutes. Lights didn't go out, did it?
Oh, cool. Why is my computer projecting to the projector? It's not building it there. That's.
Yep. Yeah, we gotta keep the one working too. I mean, I've been making some of the videos already. I'm doing some stuff with vendors. And then the guy down on the ground, I don't really have much detail. He's just kind of distraught.
Yo, they're trying to get ahead of us.
Yeah.
We'll over
And on his knees, it's kind of like, yeah, if I do it, if I put looking at it, then that takes a lot.
I'm gonna be like, walk to the people and be like,
Or I could even just
hey,
have
I'm
him
coming
standing.
to watch. Sit on your side, eat popcorn.
Honestly.
I'll sit like on the hill, like up top there, just watch everybody.
No, not really. If I take my time and I can't sketch on here, but I have some art things at home that I can use my tablet for, and I can draw a lot better on there. So I might do one of those.
Where my feet, I'll put like 3D
I have
glasses.
photos, yeah, but I don't.
Whoa,
I'm
it's
sure I
like
have
color nappy. Oh my god. Whoa.
Rush
There you go.
photos.
Whew. Oh.
Oh, you see the screen? Yeah, that would throw me off though, trying to get in so much. But I I like this one because we have dual screens at the top when I'm drawing. Up there, you shot yourself? Yeah.
Shot myself.
You know, I did that a couple months ago. I was installing a new outlet, and I touched the back of the live outlet.
Interesting.
It didn't feel amazing.
Shocking, both of them.
Wasn't as bad as I thought it would.
At least you didn't go stick a fork in it.
Oh, shit.
Did you want one that's like the display you write on?
I have one.
Did you like it?
I've only used it a little bit. I haven't really had time to really get into it.
Okay. I'm trying to get my work back. Trying to justify it.
I like the few of Lansing was just really expensive, and it was like the same thing but half the price.
Oh, it's like I bought another just like normal one like this, it's just a small one.
Well, mine was this big.
Yeah.
And I think it was like only like 500
Cincy's like 1,200 bucks.
I got my wing.
Alright, sorry for the temporary delay. This happened again. Okay. Yeah, back to this gorillas thing. You guys in Apple Valley about like 2 weeks ago on the 11th. It was a really bad power outage.
Pirates!
want to disappoint anybody who can explain the storyline. It's equally all this video.
It's so weird.
Allegedly, all Gorilla's videos are one long, continuous narrative. You just have to do some mental gymnastics to connect them all, I guess. But
I know the one before this one is Silo, and the one after this, they didn't release the music video, but
Yeah.
it's, I forget what it's called, Plastic Fruit? I don't know.
oh, they have like a
Plastic
thematic
Beach,
for
yeah.
it, something, right?
Yeah, like, the one before this is Silo, and what's his name from Dead Hard?
Oh, Bruce Willis.
Yeah, Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
like, they're
Bruce
being
Willis.
chased by Bruce Willis and Silo.
Yeah, yeah. Bruce Willis shoots the one character that has.
Yeah, that's why she has a
bullet
bullet hole in her head.
You're right. Silo. Cool video.
And then they dive into the ocean, and their car turned into a submarine.
Yep.
Some like a root or
A little bit, right? Yeah. Yeah, so Girls is like the comic book illustrator for Tank Girl and the guy from Blur. They've been doing just Gorillas forever. And like they get together, make an album, guy does all the art for it, comes up with like a new storyline, then they get to fight, don't talk for 5 years, and then come back together and do it all over again. Kind of their cycle. But it's interesting they do this like at least later on their first video was like 2D animated and like they moved into 3D, but they keep those 2D roots because they probably love comics. This character here is a fake version of the character in the Max previously. So they differentiate the real Noodle, which is the one that was shooting the Tommy gun, with the fake Noodle by one of the 2 dimensions and one's in 3 dimensions. I don't know why. It's cool though. Bruce Willis shot her, that's why there's a hole in her head. She's a robot though, so apparently that doesn't stop her. Yeah, so we have this like really nice opening, we have this water stuff. So we did a little bit of water displacement, so how do you think you get wavy oceans? Just, yeah, you animate those displacement maps, right? You just kind of make them have these rolling fractal patterns and then you just duplicate it a million times and you get this ocean. So that's not too hard, right? We've done that. A lot of what is interesting though is how they combine the 2D and 3D elements together. Pretty sure it's a P51 because I modeled one for Just Class like a decade ago. Something weird, I remember that. And then I have this like Lusitania type ship. We have this weird manatee that shows up. I really don't remember the significance of it in Class Beaches. But I just wanted to point out a lot of this stuff is like things we've kind of been doing, things we probably could do. We talked about this after the movie last week. Lighting underwater is very different than when it's above, when it's in the air, when it's just on land. What are some ways you know something is shot underwater?
Depending or you see the particles.
Yeah, you see particular matter in the water, it's a lot thicker. I think that squid looks so slimy. What do you guys think? He looks like translucent, right? Like squishy, kind of see-through. Yeah, that's called subsurface scattering. And it's like a technique that allows light from the scene to actually enter the model and then kind of reflect outwards and be changed slightly. And you got this big eyeball, which is important because we're going to do stuff with eyeballs today. So, yeah, we're going to make eyeballs today. But they did that with this squid to make it look kind of like soft and skin-like, but not with this character because they are metallic. They're robots, so they have that kind of plastic-looking skin. And I love all like the think back to our Dirty Textures project, all the wear and tear you can see on the submarines. They have lines of rust or things dripping down them and scratches. And then back to the water. You can see that it is thicker, the light gets caught in it, you can see beams of light in it. You can see like these flares that you don't normally see in the air. Pretty sure all the other pilots or artists that, other artists that have worked with Gorillas over the years. But even like these nice little details here where they're capturing reflections on the glass is pretty nice.
And I don't think it was till like the third time I saw it, but the Matrix, I always thought they were underwater.
Yeah,
The ships, they
Oh,
had
yeah.
the squid, because they move.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh, it's
It
underwater.
does kind of look out of
But when I always keep in my mind, water not moving with the ship.
We get some nice effects here. We see the wear and tear on the submarine, the pipes. Right here, this shot. How do you think they accomplished this? It's like or periscope view. Yeah, yeah, totally. You could maybe mock out the model, or you could just make this all in Photoshop, put these little lines and crosshairs and like little bits of water, make it kind of blurry so it looks like it's really close. Totally something you can put together in Photoshop. Oh, that's the other thing that helps us distinguish water. You don't usually see this unless you're close to the surface of water. Oh, there's one thing I missed. You guys see this pattern right here on the top of the shark submarine? How the light ripples? They call that fractals. And so sometimes it's something special you got to set up in the render, but you can get those fractal patterns. And that's how kind of like, as light's entering the water, it's bent and rippled together. And sometimes it's stronger, and other times it's weaker, so you get those really interesting ripples. Back up one sec. How do you think they achieved this effect? So that character, I think it's Russell, if I remember right, is, I don't know why he's giant now, but he is. How do you think they got that, like basically a flat 2D picture, this animated picture to fit? Like it's distorted through the water. It's got, you know, it has that fractal pattern through it. It's distorted.
When they just distort the water on top of it, like it's like
Yeah, yeah. So we have that, those rays are going through. They're being bent and then bouncing back at different angles than how the light came in, and it's just basically a 2D shape going through that water. But they make them move really slow because that's what they did since the scale. And then this weird dude's giving the man to get back massage or something. We get another like point of view kind of telescope look.
It's weird how they're switching from 3D to 2D.
Yeah, it is weird to combine those elements, but for whatever reason, Gorillas makes it work. And then something to do with ocean pollution, I guess. Kind of a theme, I think, of this. I think the jellyfish scene is a reference to the song Super Fast Jellyfish, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. It's stupid. It's stupid and funny. I just like it.
It's stupid but fun.
It is. It's like about breakfast. Anyway, let's go ahead and launch Photoshop. We're going to start in Photoshop today. I'm going to walk you through the assignment. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make 5 or 6. I think we need 6 eyeballs. Yeah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through making an eyeball together. Kind of hold your hands, turn the wheels. We'll make one together, and then we'll run through it another time. So we'll make 2 eyeballs together as a class, and then you'll have the freedom to make your own. And so we're going to kind of, it's not procedural, well, I guess we'll use procedural techniques. It is definitely something that you could just change up the steps and do in different ways or different orders and get different results. But basically the same application over and over. And
Are these eyeballs reused or something?
yes, we're going to take those eyeballs and put them into a scene in Maya and render them all out.
Why do you need 6 eyeballs?
Because there are 6 eyeballs in the scene. I'm pretty sure it's 6.
Freddy Krueger has an eyeball on each wall.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you the scene.
Oh, I'm pretty. No.
I need to fix the scene because again, it's all set up for mental ray and it's going to be a problem. But so let's start by making a new document. File new. Does the air get cold again?
Probably not.
And we're not going to do, we don't need to do the full size because these are relatively small objects. So go ahead and make them 1024 by 1024. Oh man, open it.
Let me restart Photoshop.
Always a good sound. Yeah, I hope that didn't kill this AC. That's,
Resolution and
72 RGB, all that stuff's good.
It's like we're all moving to the back of the class.
Sorry.
You did say 1024, right?
Yeah, we're doing 1024s by 1024, and these are 72. Color mode should be RGB, and 8-bit, all that's good. What is your setting?
Okay, so like what if our resolution was 100 and it changed it?
Okay, so what that affects mostly will be your, if you put font in the scene, the font size will be
where the
different.
hell did it go?
It can affect things like your guides and rulers and stuff too. But overall, it's pretty much the same. That resolution setting is just, how does this document compare to a real world version of it? When you have higher resolutions, it changes, it makes it smaller and stuff. But digitally, it's not treated much different at all. Really, the biggest time I deal with like DPI is when you're printing. So if you want to print your stuff, you need to figure out what DPI you want. If you were just creating solely digital things, it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, go ahead and unlock your background there. And we're just going to leave this a blank white canvas for now. We'll come back to it eventually. But right now, we'll just leave it as layer 0 and we'll leave it blank and white. Go ahead and make a new layer on top of that. And we're going to call this new layer Iris. So I'm going to kind of like handhold you through this first one. The second one, I might show you a few extra steps you could do to make it more realistic. And then after that, I'm going to let you cut loose and you guys can do whatever you want. So let's create ourselves some guides. It's pretty important that we have this dead center. So we're going to do a view new guide. And we're going to do a line at 50% horizontal, and then another new guide at 50% vertical. So 50%, and then view new guide. I'm going to do vertical this time, 50%. So just a vertical and a horizontal 50% guide. Or you can do 512 pixels. No, the exact thing. Let's grab your elliptical marquee tool. Elliptical marquee. Get to an N. You might have to cycle through a shift N. That cycles the tools under that tag. And we're going to go to the very middle crosshair of our document. I'm going to click and hold down Alt and start dragging away. And as I'm dragging away, I'm going to also hold down the Shift key so that it makes a perfectly round circle. So you can see I'm making a perfectly targeted round circle in our document. And you don't want it huge, right? Your eye should have the whites of your eye. So what we're going to do is we want this pupil to be about like 1/2 to 1/3 of the way to the edge of the document. So it should kind of be like one part here, roughly equal. Kind of like half and half. Like this is one, they have just like 2 parts. So you definitely just want to make sure you leave gaps on the side. If you fill it all the way, you'll have a character with giant weird looking eyes. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill this with a new color. It's going to make the base for our eye. So I'm going to go over to my foreground color. And I'm going to start with kind of a muted green. I'll make a green eye today.
Do you do whatever color you want?
I would say stick with me at least for the first two, and then do whatever you want after that. That way, because like if you pick different colors, different like blending modes might work better. So just kind of just kind of like a muted green, a little bit gray. We're gonna add a lot more color into it, so we want to start at a kind of a neutral base before we get crazy. Make sure you hold down Alt when you start that, so it starts from the center. And then hold Shift to make it a perfect circle. You gotta do both. Shift down. All right, so go ahead and fill that. Alt backspace. And we're going to do, we're going to load our selection constantly. We're going to do this a lot because we want to make sure we're masking to this eyeball. We're not accidentally drawing out here. So very frequently today, I'm going to say load your iris selection, and I just mean come over to your layers, and you're going to hold down Control and click the thumbnail for the iris. We're going to do that a bunch of times, so just be prepared for that. Okay? So I still have this layer selected. I didn't cancel that after I filled or deselected. So what I want to do is now make another new layer. So a new layer above iris. I'm going to name this one pupil. And I'm going to do a select, transform selection. So this is going to let me adjust the size of my mask. Like I said, everything, we really want to make sure we're targeting the crosshair all the time. So I'm going to come over to the corner, hold down Alt and drag inwards, and hold down Shift while I do that so that it keeps it as a perfect circle. Shift and Alt we're going to use a lot today as well. And I want this to be about this size. Remember, when you're doing these scales and stuff, you're scaling, transforming up and down, you're going to have to hold down Shift and Alt a bunch.
So how did we do that?
So yeah, so when you want to transform just the selection, the mask, you go to Select, Transform Selection. I think Jeff built in hotkeys for you guys, but I don't know if they are. I don't have them set up on mine.
Okay, wait a minute.
So then I'm going to grab the corner bounding box. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt. So I'm doing that with my left hand, clicking and dragging this inward until my mask is about this size. I hit OK. And I'm going to fill it. So I'll use Shift F5 to bring up my fill options. Shift F5. And I'm going to change contents to black, because that's what people usually are. Fill contents black and hit OK. And then I'll go ahead and hit Control D to deselect. So that is the very basics of an eye, right? Okay. So you don't, let's see, go to Select, and then Transform Selection. That one.
Okay.
Now hold Shift and Alt with your left hand. And now grab the corner.
Okay.
There you go. That should be good, okay. And then hit OK to accept. And then go ahead and fill that with buttons.
Okay.
Alright, so we're going to keep this layer around in case we need to come back to it. But in order to give it some more realistic pupil effect, we're going to duplicate it so that we can kind of rough up the edges a little bit. So go ahead and hit Control J to duplicate the pupil layer. And let's name this one Pupil Smudge. Pupil Smudge. And now we're going to go to the smudge tool. So you probably don't have it on your default toolbar. So you might need to click the little three buttons at the bottom to open it up and look for it. You're looking for the smudge tool. It looks like Photoshop's giving you the finger. You can also hit Control F to bring out the fine tool and just type smudge. Like Adobe. Yeah, so you're looking for the smudge tool. So this basically works kind of like finger painting, or if you took your thumb and like smeared it across the like painstakingly shaded graphite drawing you've been working on, or charcoal or something. So I'm going to wheel in using Alt, my mouse wheel, and I'm just going to come to the edges and maybe bring my hardness on my brush up to about 60%. Just remember you can right click to adjust your brush settings. The last thing I'll adjust is the strength. I think 50% is a little high. I don't want really long lines or long tails, so I'm going to change the strength down to like 30, 35%, something like that. And what I'm going to do is just come in, and I'm just going to start messing up the edges.
What'd you have your hardness at?
What's that?
What'd you set your hardness?
About 60. I don't want like super crisp lines or anything.
Size is still 13.
Yeah. Sorry, my tool crashed. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw outward lines. Like I'm coming from the center, and I'm just kind of messing up the edges of the pupil. If you actually look super close to some of the pupil, it is never perfectly round. It has lots of these little imperfections. So I'm just going to kind of come in here with my smudge tool and muss them all up. And you can do some areas twice. Maybe you come inward a little. No, don't go inward, sorry. We have two areas. But just make sure it's important that you're coming from the center. You can start out here just as long as you're pointing at the center where that crosshair lives.
All the way around.
And so all the way around. Now, if you are like me, you probably can do a lot of this accurately up to a certain like angle. Because like I can do this one fine, I can do this side fine, I can do this side fine. But when I try to draw downwards and left with my hand, my lines are not nearly as straight. That's just not something I can do with like a pen or a pencil. So I can't really do it with a mouse super well either. Luckily, Photoshop was imitating some of the other drawing programs out there and added some features a couple years ago. So we can actually rotate the whole canvas to give us a little bit better drawing angle. So you can see I went all the way around these three angles that I can do easily, but this one always gives me a little bit of trouble. So if I hit Shift and R on my keyboard, I get this little hand with an arrow, Shift and R. And if I click, it lets me spin the document like it's a piece of paper on a desk and I'm spinning it around. It's not rotating any of the layers or anything, it's just spinning the document. And you get this like little compass to let you know which way is up. So the arrow starts up, like pointing north, that's the normal orientation. But you can see as you spin it around, it points to other directions. So I'm just gonna spin this up where this quadrant here is facing upwards for me. I'm gonna go back to my smudge tool and just kind of finish smudging this up. Like I said, it's nice and easy for me. Since I have a bunch of wrist pain today, that helps. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to hit Shift R again to bring out that document rotation tool. And I'm going to hold Shift this time as I'm doing this. And you see it snaps to certain degrees. And I'm just going to shift it to where the arrow is pointing back up again. That red arrow points up. And I'm back to my original orientation. But you can see if I zoom out, it's really handy. It even rotates the guides and everything. It's a neat tool. So if you ever do any painting in Photoshop, and you think, oh, I wish I could move this like I do a drawing, there you go. Now you have the tool. All right, cool. So that's our pupil. A little warbly, a little messed up. So that's starting to look good. let's create another new layer.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
And let's call this layer noise. Call this new layer noise. So if you get a chance later on, and you look up at close-up pictures of eyes, they're not just like a single solid color. They're made up of like thousands of little fibers of all kinds of different colors. So we're going to simulate that by adding some noise. So I made a new noise layer, and what I'm going to do is load the iris selection like I mentioned earlier. So just go down to iris, control click the thumbnail for it, so that I have that selection. I'm going to flip my paint. So right now my foreground is green and my background's white. So I'll just hit X to flip those. So X flips your background with your foreground. And I'll hit Alt backspace to fill it. And you have two layers selected. Control click the thumbnail. So the thumbnail is this little picture next to the layer right there. So control click right on that guy, and it'll select what's on the layer instead of the layer itself. Does that work? Okay. We're going to do that a whole bunch. So all I did is I filled this layer with noise, or just blank pixels. And what we're going to do is do a filter, noise, add noise. Once we filled this layer, we're going to filter, noise, add noise. And it's just added in that like TV static. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit though, so maybe I'll come in here and just set the amount to about 80%, 85%. And let's change the district, or we can leave it at Gaussian, I think that's fine. Let's uncheck monochromatic though. Uncheck monochromatic. And you'll see that actually makes it like that rainbowy kind of stuff you see on old TVs. You guys probably, maybe a few of you remember.
I'm on that. Filter noise.
You have to fill the layer first. There's nothing in it, and add noise too. Go ahead and hit Alt and backspace to fill. Now do the noise.
Oh, okay.
And you know what? Since we already know we can't trust the power, after you guys have added that noise, hit OK. Let's save these up.
Yes,
8506.
Yes, you want monochromatic unchecked so that you get kind of the rainbow noise. Yeah. Monochromatic will just make it black and white. Okay. Control G to deselect that mask. And let's save this up to the My Textures directory. So File, Save As. Go to your iDrive, go into My Textures, and let's call this one I01. I01. Oh, I forgot to mention there's a challenge in I. I'm going to give you one particular I you have to try to create from scratch. It's fun. I01. Save that guy up, and we'll save often, since we don't know if there's more power problems. Alright, so everyone saved up, everyone made noise, and then everyone deselected, right? Beautiful. Let's do a filter, blur, radial blur. Once you're inside radial blur, filter, blur, radial blur. Crank up your amount to 100. Change your method to zoom. And change your quality to best. I don't want no second rate blur. And then hit OK. 100% zoom and best.
That's it.
Blur song number 2. Yeah, so we're starting to add some of that variance to the eye. We just need to clean up this mask because it is it's going outside our eyeball, right? We don't want that. So the way to fix that, Control click your thumbnail for iris to load the iris selection. And then let's do a select inverse, or you can just hit Shift Control I. And so now we've selected everything except the eyeball. And then delete. So do that again. Control click iris to select the eyeball. Control Shift I to invert the mask. So now everything except the eyeball is selected. And then I'm going to hit backspace. And that should delete all the stuff on the noise layer that was outside our iris eyeball. I don't think I need the crosshairs anymore at this point, so I'm going to hit Control and semicolon to hide them. They're not gone, they're just hidden. Control semicolon is the button to the right of L. And I'm going to move the noise layer down in my layers panel. I'm going to move noise down above iris but below pupil. So move your noise layer down to between pupil and iris.
Control click the iris.
And Control D, get rid of your mask.
Control click.
Do you want to invert it?
Okay.
Select. You want to delete?
Backspace.
No.
Yeah, backspace.
Straight injecting into the eyeball.
Cool. Now deselect your mask.
Oh yeah, you took the line.
And then you can drag that layer down
But so did I.
and put it above iris but below the pupil layer. Perfect. Cool. Now with noise selected, yeah, I'll show you. We'll go a little further on the next slide, but we can leave this one here for now. Let's change our blending modes. So with that selected, our blending modes, you'll remember right here at the top of the layer panel, by default it's set to normal, but we can flip through these and see how it interacts with our solid color. So we're probably going to look for something like overlay or vivid light, something that's going to really make this thing pop. Yeah, vivid light looks really cool, right?
Art mix is here too.
Yeah, it looks like you had too much computer. Super electric. And then I'm gonna, that looks great, that's an awesome start. It's a little strong. So what I'm gonna do is set to vivid light. I like that effect, but I'm gonna dial back the opacity so it's not quite as strong. We're gonna build a lot more layers into here, so I don't need to overpower it right away. So I'll go 55% on that opacity. But you can see, using that, like the rainbow noise, you get lots of little different colors. You get brighter greens, maybe some blues, reds. It adds that variation that our ads already have. All right, so let's add a little bit more, cut some more funkiness to this real quick. Let's duplicate the pupil smudge layer. So I'm going to find pupil smudge and hit Control J to make a copy. So pupil smudge, Control J to make a copy. And I'm going to hit Control and U to bring up my hue saturation options. Control U. Or you can go to Image, Adjustments, and find hue sat. But Control U is just faster. So hue saturation lets you shift color in an object. But if your object's already like pure black, you have to put colorize on it.
How'd you get that?
Control U. Control uniform. So you have to check this colorize box because you can't shift the colors of black, it's already black. And what we'll do is let's bring up the saturation to like 70, bring up the lightness to like 70 or 40, and you can see how it's changing color now. So bring up saturation to about 75, lightness up to about 50, and then we can adjust the hue to pick a new color. So I'm going to go for green right here. That's a little too bright of a green. That hue for me is 1, 2, 3. But I'm going to dial down the saturation a bit so it's not too vivid. And maybe the saturation a tiny bit as well. So kind of zooming up there for you. Hue is 123, sat is 49, and lightness is 39. Once you got that, hit OK. Accept the pupil smudge copies to change. And we're going to play, I think we've touched on this tool a tiny bit. Did we play around with Liquify? Have we not touched Liquify? Oh, man. Cool. You guys learned something neat today. Go to Filter. Go to Filter and choose Liquify. It's this option right here. Filter Liquify. It's right there in the main, there's that third section. So a new window's going to open up, and it's kind of weird, so give me a sec to explain it before you go nuts. It's only going to show you this layer. It doesn't show you the other layers you're working with, which I don't know why.
We did do video game.
Right, we did.
The Western one.
The Western one, yeah, you're right.
Not Rainbow,
Not a ton. Yeah, okay, we did touch this a touch. So what we're going to do is we're going to use there's a couple tools here. We're mostly just going to use this one right here, the default one called Forward Warp. And this one's similar to Smudge. It just behaves in a different way. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and just kind of draw these like little tendrils coming off the eye, like we did earlier. I don't think the Rotate Works tool works here though, however. It doesn't, so sorry. So what we should do though is adjust our brush size. 305 is ginormous. Let's dial that down to something realistic, like 30 maybe. Or not even 30, probably like 18. Alright, so yeah, that's a good size. Density at 50. Let's bring that pressure up quite a bit though. Maybe like 90, 80. And what that should do is let us start kind of smudging this around. It's not working quite like I want it. Bring my density over. All right. So brush at about 18, 20. You want it pretty small. Pressure pretty high. And your density, it doesn't seem like the density does a lot. All right, well, 4 doesn't do anything, so I guess it does something. Yeah, I guess the density just makes the brush kind of stronger. So I'll bring that up. Anyway, what you're just going to come over here and do is just grab the edges, and you're just going to push outwards. And it might take a couple times, but you're just going to kind of push outwards to create these like sort of tendrils with this tool. This might work better with a paintbrush, so we'll try another layer of paintbrush too. But just to kind of play around with this, maybe bring your brush up a little bit more. It does kind of have like a weird proportional, yeah, do that. Bring your brush up to like 40, and it'll get more work done. But try to leave them kind of pointy. You don't kind of want like weird blobs like that. That's not what an eye would look like. You can undo those. But like I said, kind of like tendrils that get thinner towards the end.
Oh my god.
How do you go back more than 2 spots?
So if you need to go back a lot, this tool has a weird thing that's called the reconstruct brush right here. It's just below that forward warp. And when you use that, it's actually going to build it back to how it originally looked. But it kind of lets you selectively paint where you're undoing.
How you did that? You want?
To undo,
Yeah.
there's a tool up here in the corner. So there's your warp tool, the top one. The second one right here is the reconstruct.
Okay.
And reconstruct is like painting undo, which is kind of cool, but not always what you're looking for.
Also, Mike, you do the show background option. You can last over there. You can see the caps.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. They also added some new stuff I haven't fully played around with, but there's like facial aware warp in here now. So you can literally, like, if you load up a picture of yourself, it'll put points on your mouth and your eyes and your nose and stuff, and then you can adjust sliders to just like make yourself smile or frown. It's really creepy. Cool. So, Joey, I noticed a great thing. If you turn on show backdrop and bring up your opacity, you can see the other layers. Shows how much I play around with these tools. I recommend staying within the bounds of your original eye. So I need to kind of dial this one back a little bit. You don't have to do it very evenly either. It's okay for some randomness. Definitely one of those projects that, like, the more individualized little layers and things you build up, the better the effect. I don't want to spend too long, so made a giant green Nickelodeon splat or whatever. I'm happy with that. So give you guys like one more minute to work on that, and then we're gonna move on. More seconds, we'll move on. Use the timer tool. I never use the timer tool. It is fun. I wish I had that 24 countdown. Like really stressful. Alright, am I hit okay? Accept this liquefy. So now you can see I have the liquefy splat on top. Let's move the pupil smudge. Let's call this, I don't know, let's just call this lines, I guess. I'm going to rename it lines, weird lines, eyeball variation, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to move that down to above the noise layer but below the pupil layer. So all I'm doing is I'm taking this layer. Basically, pupil needs to pretty much remain at the top for most of this. So I'm going to take the lines layer and put it between pupil and noise. And let's change the blend modes and see what we can find that looks nice. Multiply looks pretty cool. Not bad. I like multiply. So it might depend on what colors you went with. They might be slightly different. If something looks like it might work, but it's too dark, you can always adjust the opacity down. So linear burn actually looks pretty good if I dial back the opacity. Those color burn or multiply, they all look good. Oh.
How dark do you want
You want variation, but you don't want it to like disappear into the people. Go color burn. A little more saturation. All right. Duplicate your lines layer. Duplicate the lines layer, so it says lines copy. Change the blend mode back to normal. Bring the opacity back up to 100%. So we made a copy, Control J, of the lines layer. We change our blend mode back to normal, and we change our opacity back to 100%. Let's go to our hue saturation tool again, Control U. Control U, uniform. And I'm going to play around with the hue slider. I don't have to click colorize this time because it already has a color to it. And I'm going to go for a contrasting color, something kind of stands out from green. So I'm going to look for kind of a like honey golden orange. And I might increase that saturation just a touch, increase the saturation just of the lightness a touch. Something that stands out and sticks out from this eye. And then I'll hit OK. And again, I'll play with my blend modes and just try to find something that works with this. Oh, you know what? Actually, before I do that, let's rotate it. So it's not right on top of it. Hit Control T. So back up and mess with your blend modes. Control T. And we can kind of reposition this and rotate it around. Try to find a place for it to interlock interestingly. Or you can even right click during your transformation and choose like flip horizontal, flip vertical, and realign it here. Just as long as we don't go outside of our pupil or our iris layer, we should be fine. I think that looks good. So I just rotated it for variation. I flipped it, either horizontal or vertical, I don't remember. Just make sure it's mostly lined up and I'll hit OK. Now I'm going to go through the blend modes on the line copy layer. Try to find something that stands out. Light looks pretty cool. Screen's all right. Linear light, that looks pretty good. You dial back that opacity on linear light. I think around 80% on that looks pretty good. Let's back out and kind of see what this looks like. So it's a good idea to kind of zoom out and get like a bird's eye view. To get a view of the eye. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. What do you guys think? All right? Cool. All right, so let's move on. I went with linear light, but with the blend modes, it's usually going to kind of depend on what colors you personally have chosen. So whatever one you think looks good, just do it. I like linear, usually multiply or color dodge, something like that's going to make it work with this project. So this is starting to look pretty good. However, it looks pretty flat, right? Do you agree? So eyeballs are kind of a really weird shape if you look at them. They aren't just round like we think like that. They're round and then they kind of have a bump in the front. And then the actual eye has a cone. So the colored part of your eye is inverted. It goes inward. And there's like a lens here, like glasses, you know, like a lens. There's a lens there called your cornea. And that's what focuses the image into your eyeball. And the pupil is indented. It goes inward. So we could do a couple things to kind of start building out this dimension to make it feel like the eyeball's not super flat. So I think we're done pretty much with the pupil for now and doing like the color variations. So I want to work more on the iris itself. So what I'm going to do is go down to the iris layer. I'm going to make a new layer just above this, and I'll call it clouds. So we went down to iris, click new layer. And I'm going to control click the iris layer, so I select this round section. I'm going to hit D on my keyboard to get my default black and white color. All right, we've done this a ton, and we're going to do a filter, renderer, guess what? Clouds, yeah, filter render clouds. And for the heck of it, let's do a difference clouds too. Filter, render, difference clouds. Because I'm feeling dangerous. I'm feeling different.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So all we've done is we just filled this eye with some clouds. And let's go ahead and blend these. I bet you multiply is going to be the one to go with. And we'll just drop back that opacity a lot. Maybe not. Let's see what else. Maybe overlay. Yeah, overlay looks pretty good. Ooh, hard light. That's not bad. Maybe soft light. Yeah, so all we're doing is just adding more variation to this. That's starting to help. Just breaking things up a little bit. Create a new layer above clouds. New layer above clouds. And name this new layer Ring. Name this new layer Ring. Just one ring. You guys still have your mask, or did you deselect? Still want your mask. So control click your iris if you did deselect. What we're going to do is we're going to do a select transform selection. Select transform selection. Using Shift and Alt, we're going to grab a corner and drag this in slightly. So I did a transform selection under the select menu. I use Shift and Alt to grab a corner, and I dragged it in slightly, just to about here. Hit OK. Now we should have our default black and white colors loaded, so go ahead and hit Alt backspace to fill this with black. And we're going to do another transform selection after that. So after you fill with black, do another select, transform selection. Shift and Alt again. Remember, we're trying to stay with perfect circles. And let's bring this inward about that much. So what we're doing is we've created like rings.
Okay.
We just want to kind of leave this band here. So I've come in another, pretty much the same amount I came in from the edge. So from here to here is about the same distance from here to here.
How do you fill it again?
What's that?
How do you fill it?
Alt backspace. Then do another transform selection. And we're going to scale inward again. Hit OK to accept that transform. And then hit backspace to delete the inner portion. So what we've done is created a ring. you guys just created this ring. Deselect, Control D. Go to Filter, Blur, Dodge Blur. Filter, Blur, Dodge Blur. And we're gonna blur this. Say 13 pixels. Blur is 13 pixels. Did okay? Blur the ring 13 pixels, and let's check out our blend modes. Probably gonna go with overlay,
Okay.
knock down the opacity.
Step back.
Yeah, overlay, and I'm looking at 50% opacity. Michael, your eyes scares me. It's so dark. It's like it's stealing my soul. Can you steal it away?
Filter, blur.
That work?
Gosh, yes. 13%.
So
Okay.
make sure you blur that eye, filter, blur, gauge and blur. Did you deselect first? Because if you don't, it'll just blur inside
Yeah,
of it.
I deselect, but it ain't blurring anything.
Oh, you're on the noise layer.
ring.
Okay.
Oh, I done messed up my background. Hold on. Let me
Well, hold on. Undo it.
Okay.
There you go.
No.
Now you're on the
Ring.
ring. Yeah.
Filter. Blur. Gosh. Okay, there it goes. Now what's after that? Is that it?
13 pixels, and then you're going to blend that on overlay to 50% opacity.
Blend overlay. 50%.
Okay. Let's click on the noise layer, click on noise, and then make a new layer. And this new layer will be called highlight. So like I said, the eyeball we're looking at is actually like a cone, it's inverted, right? So if my light source is up here, right, so here's like a little light bulb. It's shiny, right? The light is actually going to catch down here at the bottom, and less so up here. So actually what we're going to do is brighten up this section of the eyeball because it would be catching light, and we'll slightly darken this side of the eyeball because it would be catching less light up here. This is going to be reflecting back, the other side won't be. So with this highlight layer, let's grab our brush B and hit X so that we're painting with our white pixels to brighten up. And let's go ahead and preemptively change our blend mode. I think we're going to want screen, yes, but at a much lower opacity. Hold on, let me double check. I'm going to exaggerate real quick to get the idea what I'm going with. Overlay. Oh, either overlay or screen will work for this. So, before we start painting, set your highlight layer to before we start painting, set your highlight layer to screen or overlay. Overlay is going to get you more saturated colors.
Okay.
So I'm going to try that. I'm going to grab my brush tool. And here's what I'm going to do. Set my opacity very low. I'm going to set this to like 15% so that it paints very, very slowly. Opacity on my brush, default brush is B. The opacity 50%. Yes, the hardness on the brush is going to be 0%. I'm also using white paint. And for my brush size, it might vary in how large you initially drew that eye. I'm going to go with about 70 pixels. And so all I'm doing is I'm coming here with my brush, and I'm just going to do one pass, not even that high actually. I'm going to do a pass, like if the eye was a clock here, I'm going to do it from like, I don't know, 8 to like 5 o'clock. So that I'm just going to do one pass like this on the bottom side of this eye. You want to watch? That's all I'm doing right here. You know what to do. Now you can see it's just brightening up that bottom piece a tiny bit. That's a couple of you guys, your clouds layers are very, very dark and they're kind of overtaking. Make sure you go to that clouds layer and you dial that opacity down to something like 40% or 30%. That way you get to see all the other colors come through. It works a lot better if all your colors bleed through. All right, everyone painted that little highlight? Cool. Let's do the opposite for the shadow part that will be on the top. So make another new layer. We'll call this shadow, or subtle shadow. Let's set this new shadow layer to the multiply blend mode. And I'm going to hit X again to flip my paint. And this time I'm just going to paint from about 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock on my eyeball here. It's not working. Oh, I don't want to. So I just come in here and I kind of painted a little shadow, very, very lightly. I can even dial that back a touch.
Oh, what the hell? Tended to.
I'm just going to leave that with multiply. So this is just helping us create some dimension to our eyeball. Again, it's helped simulate those shapes. And that is like pretty much the basic take on this. That's like our default eye. We could actually go a lot further. Last thing we'll do before we take break is let's add in our background. The whites of our eye are called...
What's your opacity? I'm sorry.
On the shadow layer, 30%. I just want it real soft. I don't want it to be the same darkness as the ring. I just want it slightly darker than the sides. So this is like the very basics of this eye. You can do so much more with this. Honestly, the more time you spend in here tweaking this, the better it looks. Before we go back down to the very bottom layer, layer 0, that was white. And let's name this sclera. I believe that's right spelling.
Let's see.
No, that's all right. We can close that. That is the actual term for the whites of your eye. At least I think it is. Last time I checked. I did a real deep dive on modeling eyes one time. So we're on the sclera layer. That's the very bottom basic layer. And I want you guys to bring up your gradient tool. So if it's not in your toolbar, you might have to click your 3 dots and go looking for it. Or Control F to bring out the fine tool, and you can search for gradient by typing in GRAD or whatever. I want you to go to your color swatches, double click the foreground color. And we're going to find like a very light not pure white, but somewhere kind of very yellow, pinkish, just a hint of color. No one's eyes are perfectly white. Unless they've been touched up in Photoshop. So I'm looking for a tone like this. It's just it's got a tiny hint of yellowish to it. And that's going to be the whites of our eye. Yep. And then hit OK. And then I want you to double click your background color swatch, so your background right here. And now you're going to choose a much more pinkish color, kind of pinkish orange. Something like that. So that's your second color. So the first one, maybe a little more red. Turns out our eyes are bloodshot all the time. It's super gross. So that's the color I'm going with. A very light yellow for our foreground, kind of this dark orangey red for our, not super dark, but it's like an orangey red for our background. Hit OK? Now we need to adjust the gradient before we draw it out. So pick your colors. It should definitely be some kind of red. Let's go into our gradient editor by double clicking right here. Or just single clicking actually. The first gradient right here, that default is always your foreground color mixed with your background. So go ahead and click on that first color swatch as our starting place. And by default, it's an even blend of, one color to the next. But we're actually going to adjust it. So this little bottom down here is called a key or a stop, depending on what program you're using. That is the first color, this one right here. I want you to grab it and drag it over so the location says about 40%. So I'm going to click and drag on this. I'm going to slide it over to about 40%. All right, and before we save it, we're going to click New.
So your back changes to which you could totally do with making your own. Call this eyeball. And then
So we're going to save this gradient so you guys don't have to make it again. You can use it for all your other eyes. So where it says custom, once we changed it, the name became custom. Swap out that name for something you'll remember like eyeball. And then go ahead and click new. And you'll see when you do that, it's actually added the eyeball to your gradient swatches and you can use them in other projects. So yeah, little time saving tip there. Hit OK. Still on the gradient editor, go ahead and grab the radial gradient right here. It's the second gradient option. It looks like a circle. And start at the middle of your eyeball and drag outwards past the corner. So you're going to click and hold right here, drag outwards towards the corner, and let go. It might take a couple tries to get this right, but you're just trying to get it to where it's kind of pink hazy in the corner, and mostly you kind of have a soft fall off towards the edges. There you go, that's your eye. Go ahead and save that. Control S. Alright, let's go ahead and take our break. I'm going to go ahead and eat my dinner. And then when we come back, we'll make another eye, and then you guys can start making your own. Guys like this.